Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Good morning, sir. How are we?
I'm doing well. How are you, Liam?
I am good, much better now. I have recovered the worst part of my flu, so I cannot complain.
I'm glad to hear it. It's so funny. Like, we launched season 2, and it just made me realize, first of all, how much I enjoy talking to you. So I have so much fun doing these, and I learn so much. And both from like preparing for these and, you know, the guests that we interview, and it really energizes me. So I'm excited to just dive right in and get going.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Today, I want to talk about scope creep.
Okay.
And it's a pretty significant issue that happens in clinical trials. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that sponsors and CROs really appreciate the impact that it has on a clinical trial site. So you know, I take wildlife photos, right?
I do, sir.
Yeah. So I love the process of taking the photos. You'll often find me lying on my belly in the mud, the side of a pond or a lake or, you know, whatever. And so I love the process of taking the photos. It's 98%, you know, just sitting there, lying there and nothing happening. And, you know, that 2% of pure adrenaline rush when you have something that happens that is going to make for an interesting photo. And so I love that part of it. And I also like reviewing and processing them when I'm done. And the thing that I really don't like that's a pain is that, first of all, once I have a photo that it's ready to be shared, I've got to save 3 different versions of the photo, you know, one size for Instagram, one size for other social media, and then a print ready version. And then I have to schedule when I'm going to post it, on which platform, write captions, track what I've shared and what platform. And I'm really not good with the social media side of things. And there's probably an app out there for this already, and maybe one of our listeners can guide me to it. But let's say for a second there isn't. And I am going to hire you to build me an app. So I hire you and provide you directions on what I want built. And I want something that's going to help me schedule and automatically post my photos on a list of social media platforms. So you go back and you start creating mock-ups. I approve them and you start writing the code to build the app. And all along the process, you're sharing updates with me. And as I see things comes together, it actually inspires me. And I say, hey, you know, it'd be great if once the photo is posted, the app collects the data on, you know, the likes, the comments, and actually provides suggestions for improved engagement. So it wasn't part of the original plan. And yes, it's a good idea, but it's going to take effort, time, and money for you to incorporate that in the project. And so that's an example of scope creep. And in clinical trials, scope creep happens at the site level all the time. And it's really causing frustration, fatigue, and fritters away considerable site time. So things that scope creep in clinical trials. So additions to the ECRF after the study starts might be, you know, you get to the point where you're submitting invoices for the study, and all of a sudden the sponsor CRO wants additional information that wasn't outlined in the contract. It's, you know, at the end of the study, making an investigator download the PDF of the ECRF instead of just sending them a USB with all of it on it. You know, it's these kinds of things. It's finding out after the study starts that the sponsor wants you to destroy the return drug instead of shipping it back to a depot to be destroyed. So, you know, all these things, they may not seem like big things in and of itself, but they can be. And when a site is planning for their workload and their staffing resources, the scope creep really impacts the time that a site has during the day.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you're impacting site time, then you're impacting their ability to recruit for a trial.
100%. Why do you think it's so? I mean, we see it all the time, right? Why do you think it's become such a problem in our space, in the clinical trial space?
There's two reasons, I think. So first of all, I think it's easy for the sponsor and CRO just to say, "Oh, we'll get the site to do it," and or it's not a big thing that we're asking. This is a small thing. But and then the second thing is that it's not really appreciated what a small thing amounts to at a site on a daily basis when they're getting all these requests from sponsors and it's happening across all the studies.
Yeah.
So it actually turns into a much bigger problem. So yeah, I gave the example of additions to an ECRF after the study starts. So often, I think one of the common things we see is a sponsor deciding after the fact that, wait a second, we want an additional piece of information collected about the patient's medical history. So there's something specific we want them to query.
Yeah.
And so you got to go back and you got to, maybe you have to search the medical records to find the answer. Maybe you have to call every patient in the study. And sure, if you've got one or two patients in the study, maybe that's not a big consumer of time. But if you're a high recruiting site and you have 20 or 30 participants, that's going to take significant time to go back and collect that information.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's two big reasons for that.
To the sort of follow-up question to that is, how are sites reacting when that scope creep comes on? To your analogy before about building an app, if you're coming to me with scope creep, then it's out of scope, therefore there's additional costs that are assigned to it. How can sites get better at handling and managing the associated or the impact of scope creep on, as you say, time, resources, and ultimately what they're getting paid to do that work?
So it really depends how each site deals with it.
Mm-hmm.
And some sites that are very confident, understand the processes, actually recognize it as scope creep, because oftentimes it may not be recognized, and often it might happen where the monitor just makes a request of the study coordinator, and other people don't know that this is actually happening, and the study coordinator just fulfills the request, but it took hours of the study coordinator's time and nobody is aware of it. So one, having really good communication at the site level between staff so that the staff is well trained to say, hey, if you get a request that's outside the protocol, or having a list of, here are some examples of things that you need to let the principal investigator know. And some sites actually have it as part of their process to say, yeah, you can't do any of these extra things unless you have approval from the PI. And then it comes to being confident enough to say, go back to the sponsor and CRO and just say, no, this is outside of the scope of the trial. It's not within the contract. We need a budget amendment to cover it. So when that happens, often the sponsor replies, absolutely, no problem. We'll get that in place. Problem is then that can take months. So what does the site do in the meantime? Do they actually go ahead? Do they wait until the contract's been amended? Or, because some of these things are going to take more time in the future if they wait for the contract amendment versus doing it right away. And so the site is left with this conundrum of, what do we do now? The sponsor's going to pay us for it, but what do we actually do now? So it's an absolutely big challenge. And ultimately, if you were to say, let's follow the letter of the law, so to speak, you wait until the budget amendment is executed.
Yeah.
But sponsors aren't going to like to hear that, I'm sure.
No. I agree completely. No, it's super. Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting that it's that closing that gap, isn't it? of trying to be in a position where we can make the change, but also the sites, which we know like monetary is a big factor for them. How do we close that gap, as you say, between discussion of this needs to change and then execution of, or payment, shall I say, of this this will get paid? It's
Yeah, and one of the really frequent ones that comes up that I hear about a lot that gets escalated to me is it's the end of the study. We're approaching data lock.
Yeah.
And the CRA reaches out to the sites and says, "Oh, I need to monitor something. So we need to have a remote monitoring visit to cover this because I can't make it out to the site in time." And the remote monitoring wasn't part of the study contract or the budget or the study plan. And so now the site is caught and pressured to do something that isn't part of their contract. And sites need to be able to say to the sponsor or CRO, "Look, this is outside our contract.
Yeah.
We have concerns, and we understand the time sensitive nature of this, but this is not a problem we created."
Yeah, it's being courageous, isn't it? And having those honest conversations, and but also not being a blocker to say, listen, we can do this. There's a couple of options that will help you, but also help us. And here are some of the options. Which one would be best for you all to work within, and present some ideas and some things. So you're seen as being part of the team rather than just a roadblock.
Well, interestingly enough, so one solution to this is some sponsors are proactive when they're negotiating budgets and contracts, and they will have an additional amount in the budget to cover things that they can approve, these one-off things.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't need an amendment to the budget to cover something like this. It's just like, yeah, just invoice us at X amount an hour for the work that needs to be done. And it's already part of the study budget that we've built in for this possibility. And so those sponsors are being really smart about it.
That's great. That's great to hear. Ted, thank you so much for that. That was super helpful for me, and I'm sure for everyone else listening. So appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great day, Liam.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.